text message arrived at 2:47 a.m., glowing like a neon sign in the darkness of our bedroom. Your husband embarrassed us all tonight. Fix this, or we're done with both of you. I stared at the screen, my architect's mind automatically calculating angles, not of buildings this time, but of the social demolition that was about to begin. Nina stirred beside me, her perfectly styled blonde hair spread across the silk pillowcase like she was posing for a magazine shoot, even in sleep. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The message was from her brother Bradley Harrow, Palm Beach's self-appointed king of entitled mediocrity. What had I done to offend His Royal Highness this time? Oh, right. I'd committed the unforgivable sin of suggesting that maybe, just maybe, spending $40,000 on a single dinner party was excessive. Grant? Nina's voice cut through the darkness, sharp as broken glass. Why are you on your phone? Just checking the time, I lied, sliding the phone face down on the nightstand. But I knew this was it, the moment our carefully constructed life would start cracking like a building with a faulty foundation. I just didn't know yet that I'd be the one holding the sledgehammer. 3 hours later, I was in my office at Elwood Architecture, nursing my third cup of coffee and staring at blueprints that might as well have been written in hieroglyphics. My business partner, Jesse Martinez, knocked on my glass door, his expression somewhere between amused and concerned. You look like someone ran over your dog with a steamroller, he said, settling into the chair across from my desk. What's eating you? Jesse was one of those rare people who could read a room like I read structural plans, with perfect accuracy and no sugarcoating. We'd built this firm together over 12 years, and he'd watched my marriage to Nina evolve from passionate romance to polite coexistence to something that resembled a hostile business merger. Bradley strikes again, I said, showing him the text. Jesse whistled low. What did you do this time? Suggest he get a job? Worse, I questioned his spending habits in front of his country club friends. The horror, Jesse said flatly, a grown man being held accountable for his choices. That was the thing about Jesse. He had this gift for cutting straight through the bullshit to the heart of any problem. It's what made him brilliant at designing commercial spaces and equally brilliant at calling me out when I was being an idiot. Nina's already planning damage control, I continued. She wants me to apologize to Bradley publicly, maybe take out an ad in the Palm Beach Post while I'm at it. Or, Jesse said, leaning back in his chair, you could tell them all to go to hell and see what happens. I laughed, but it came out hollow. Easy for you to say, you're not married to the Harrow family dynasty. No, but I've watched you slowly disappear over the past 5 years. The Grant I started this business with wouldn't have tolerated this crap for 5 minutes. He was right, of course. Somewhere along the line, I'd traded my backbone for social acceptance, my principles for peace. The question was, what was I going to do about it? My phone buzzed. Another text from Bradley. Family meeting tonight, 7 p.m. Don't embarrass Nina again. I showed Jesse the message. He shook his head slowly. You know what your problem is, Grant. You're too nice. These people see kindness as weakness, and they're going to keep pushing until you push back. And if I push back, I lose everything. Maybe, Jesse said, standing up, or maybe you'll finally find out what you're really made of. After he left, I sat alone with my thoughts and the growing realization that tonight's family meeting wasn't going to be a discussion. It was going to be an execution. Mine. The Harrow family estate looked like something out of a magazine spread titled Excessive Wealth Weekly. Sprawling across 3 acres of prime Palm Beach real estate, the Mediterranean-style mansion screamed money so loudly it could probably be heard from space. Nina had been silent during the entire drive over, her jaw set in that particular way that meant she was furious but trying to maintain her composure. She'd changed clothes 3 times before we left, finally settling on a cream-colored designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Just try not to make things worse, she said as we pulled into the circular driveway. I'll do my best to contain my natural charm, I replied. She didn't laugh. She hadn't laughed at any of my jokes in months. Bradley answered the door himself, which was unusual. Normally he had staff for such menial tasks. He was dressed in what I'd come to think of as his serious businessman costume, expensive suit, gold watch, expression of perpetual disappointment. Grant, Nina. He nodded curtly. Everyone's waiting in the study. Everyone turned out to be quite a crowd. Nina's parents, Richard and Margaret Harrow, sat on the leather sofa like judges preparing to deliver a sentence. Bradley's wife Ashley perched on the arm of his chair, her face a mask of manufactured concern. Even Nina's cousin Derek was there, scrolling through his phone with the bored expression of someone who'd rather be literally anywhere else. "Please sit," Richard said, gesturing to two chairs positioned directly across from the group. It felt like facing a firing squad. "I think we all know why we're here," Bradley began, his voice carrying that particular tone of authority that comes from never having been told no as a child. Grant's behavior last night was completely unacceptable. "My behavior?" I couldn't help myself. "You mean when I suggested that spending $40,000 on dinner for 12 people might be a bit much?" "You embarrassed our family in front of the Worthingtons, the Ashfords, and half the country club board," Ashley interjected, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Margaret leaned forward, her pearl necklace catching the light. "Grant, dear, we understand you come from different circumstances. But when you married Nina, you became part of this family. That comes with certain expectations." Different circumstances. That was Margaret's polite way of saying I wasn't born with a trust fund and a summer house in the Hamptons. My father had been a construction foreman, my mother a school teacher. I'd worked my way through college and built my architecture firm from nothing. Apparently, that was something to be ashamed of. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" I said, though I already knew the answer. "Apologize," Bradley said simply. "Publicly. Make it clear that you spoke out of turn and that you fully support our family's lifestyle and values." I looked at Nina, hoping to see some sign that she'd stand up for me, that she'd tell her family they were being ridiculous. Instead, she was staring at her hands, her silence speaking volumes. "And if I don't?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Then you'll find that your social connections in this town dry up very quickly," Richard said, his voice calm but threatening. "Your business depends on relationships, Grant, relationships that can be influenced." It was a threat, plain and simple. Cross the family and they'd destroy my livelihood. "I need some air," I said, standing up abruptly. "Grant," Nina started, but I was already walking toward the door. I found myself on the estate's back terrace, looking out over the perfectly manicured gardens. The pool glowed like a blue jewel in the darkness, surrounded by palm trees that probably cost more to maintain than most people made in a year. Having second thoughts, I turned to find Derek approaching, 2 glasses of whiskey in his hands. He offered me one. "About what?" I asked, accepting the drink. "About whether this family is worth the trouble." Derek was different from the rest of the Harrows. Younger, less entitled, more aware of how ridiculous his family could be. He worked as a photographer, much to his parents' dismay, and had always been something of a black sheep. "They're really going to destroy my business over this?" I asked. "They'll try," Derek said, taking a sip of his whiskey. "The question is, are you going to let them?" Before I could answer, Nina appeared in the doorway. "Grant, we need to go back inside. They're waiting." I looked at Derek, then at my wife, then back at the glowing pool. In that moment, I made a decision that would change everything. "Tell them I'll have an answer tomorrow," I said. "Grant, please." "Tomorrow, Nina. I need time to think." The ride home was silent, except for the sound of Nina's barely controlled breathing. I could feel her anger radiating off her like heat from a furnace. "You're really going to make me choose between you and my family," she said as we pulled into our driveway. "I'm not making you choose anything," I replied. "I'm just refusing to be their whipping boy anymore." "Same thing," she said, getting out of the car and slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. As I watched her storm into the house, I realized Jessie had been right. It was time to find out what I was really made of. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my home office, surrounded by awards and photographs from the successful projects that had built my reputation in Palm Beach. Luxury hotels, high-end condominiums, custom mansions for people who had more money than sense. All of it dependent on the social network that the Harrows were threatening to destroy. At 6 a.m., I made my decision. I called Jessie first. "This better be good," he grumbled. "Normal people sleep at this hour." "I'm not apologizing to Bradley," I said. There was a pause. Then, "Good for you. What's the plan?" "I don't know yet, but I'm done being their puppet." "Well, when you figure it out, let me know. I've got your back." That was Jessie, loyal to a fault and always ready for a fight. Nina was already gone when I came downstairs. Her car wasn't in the garage, and there was no note. I found myself oddly relieved by her absence. My phone started ringing at 8:30 a.m. First, it was Tom Ashford, canceling our lunch meeting to discuss his new restaurant project. Then Sarah Worthington called to postpone our consultation about her beach house renovation. By noon, I'd received 6 cancellations and 3 polite but firm rejections for projects I'd been courting for months. The Harrows worked fast. I had to give them that. Jesse appeared in my office around 2 p.m. with sandwiches and beer. "Figured you might need sustenance," he said, setting the food on my desk. "How bad is it?" "Bad," I admitted, showing him the list of canceled appointments. "They're not even being subtle about it." "Good," Jesse said, unwrapping his sandwich. "Means they're scared." "Scared? They're destroying my business." "Our business," Jesse corrected, "and they're only destroying the part that depends on their approval. We've got other clients, Grant, people who hire us because we're good at what we do, not because we kiss the right asses." He was right, but it still stung. 12 years of building relationships, of playing their games and following their rules, gone in a single morning. "There's something else," I said. Nina moved out. Jesse raised an eyebrow. "When?" "This morning, apparently. Took her clothes and left her wedding ring on the kitchen counter." "I'm sorry, man." The funny thing was, I wasn't sure I was sorry. The house felt lighter without Nina's constant tension, her endless criticism, her need to turn every conversation into a performance for an invisible audience. "Maybe it's for the best," I said. Jesse studied my face carefully. "You're planning something, aren't you?" "Maybe." "Want to share with the class?" I leaned back in my chair, feeling something I hadn't experienced in years. Freedom. "Remember the Morrison project? The one where the client tried to stiff us on payment?" "Yeah. You documented everything so thoroughly that his lawyer advised him to pay up rather than go to court. Why?" "I've been documenting things with the Harrows, too. Not intentionally, but architects keep records, Jesse. Receipts, contracts, photographs, correspondence. Everything." Jesse's eyes lit up with understanding. "What kind of everything?" I opened my laptop and pulled up a folder I'd been unconsciously building for years. Photos from family gatherings, email chains about business deals, records of loans that were never repaid, documentation of Bradley's various failed ventures that had been quietly bailed out by the family trust. "Holy shit, Grant. This is comprehensive," I finished. "The Harrows have been very careful to maintain their public image as successful, legitimate business people. But the reality is messier." Jesse scrolled through the files, his expression growing more amazed by the minute. "This stuff about Bradley's restaurant chain, didn't that go bankrupt?" "Officially, yes. Unofficially, the family trust covered all the debts and paid off the creditors to keep it quiet. Same with Ashley's boutique, Derek's art gallery, and about 6 other ventures that should have been public disasters." "And you have proof of all this?" "Financial records, email correspondence, even some recorded conversations from family dinners. Nina always insisted I bring my phone to record family memories." Jesse sat back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. "You magnificent bastard. You're going to expose them." "I'm going to give them a choice," I corrected. "Back off and leave my business alone, or watch their carefully constructed public image crumble. And if they call your bluff?" I thought about Nina's wedding ring sitting on the kitchen counter, about the years of subtle insults and constant pressure to be someone I wasn't, about the friends who'd abandoned me at the first sign of social disapproval. Then I'll show them what a real embarrassment looks like. The call came at 7 p.m., just as I was finishing dinner alone for the 3rd night in a row. Nina's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. "We need to talk. All of us. Tonight." "I'm listening," I said, though I was really just buying time to set up the recording app on my phone. "The Coral Bay Club, private dining room, 1 hour." The Coral Bay Club was Palm Beach's most exclusive restaurant, the kind of place where a single meal cost more than most people's weekly grocery budget. It was also very public, which meant the Harrows were confident they held all the cards. They were about to learn otherwise. I arrived exactly on time, dressed in my best suit and carrying a leather portfolio that contained printed copies of everything I'd compiled over the years. The hostess led me to a private room where the entire Harrow family was waiting, along with a few additions I hadn't expected. Tom Ashford was there, looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit. Sarah Worthington sat beside her husband, both of them avoiding eye contact. Even Judge Patricia Morrison, a family friend who'd presided over several high-profile cases, was present. "Impressive turnout," I said, taking the single empty chair that faced the assembled group. "Should I be flattered or terrified?" "Sit down, Grant," Richard said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. I remained standing. "I think I'll stay up here, thanks. Better view of the audience." Bradley leaned forward, his face flushed with anger. "You've had 3 days to come to your senses. Instead, you've chosen to be stubborn and destructive." "Destructive?" I laughed, and the sound echoed off the room's expensive wood paneling. That's rich, coming from someone who's destroyed more businesses than a natural disaster. How dare you? How dare I what? Tell the truth? I opened my portfolio and pulled out a thick stack of documents. Should we talk about the restaurant chain that failed, but somehow didn't leave any creditors unpaid? Or maybe the boutique that declared bankruptcy while mysteriously maintaining a 7-figure inventory? The room went very quiet. Judge Morrison shifted uncomfortably in her chair. I don't know what you think you're doing, Margaret said, her voice icy, but these accusations are documented, I interrupted, placing a photograph on the table. It showed Bradley signing papers in Richard's study, with financial statements clearly visible on the desk. This was taken at last year's Christmas party. Nina thought it would make a nice family business photo for your holiday cards. Nina's face went white. Grant, you can't what? Show people who you really are? I pulled out more documents, spreading them across the table like a dealer laying out cards. Email chains discussing how to hide assets, bank records showing mysterious transfers, even a recording of Bradley bragging about how easy it is to manipulate bankruptcy laws when you have the right connections. This is blackmail, Tom Ashford said, finally finding his voice. No, I replied calmly. Blackmail would be if I demanded money or favors in exchange for keeping quiet. This is just information sharing. I reached into my portfolio one more time and pulled out a USB drive, setting it in the center of the table. Everything's on there. Financial records, photographs, recordings, email chains, business documents, enough evidence to keep investigative journalists busy for months. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. What do you want? Richard finally asked. I want you to leave me alone, I said simply. Stop interfering with my business, stop trying to control my life, and stop treating me like I'm some kind of servant who should be grateful for your attention. And in return? In return, I'll keep this information to myself. Your secrets stay secret, your reputation stays intact, and everyone goes on with their lives. Bradley slammed his hand on the table, making the water glasses jump. You snake! You think you can threaten us? I'm not threatening anyone, I said, my voice perfectly calm. I'm offering you a choice. The same kind of choice you offered me 3 days ago. Judge Morrison cleared her throat. Perhaps we should all take a step back. No, Nina said suddenly, standing up. Her face was flushed, her hands shaking with rage. I've heard enough. She turned to face me, and for a moment, I saw a glimpse of the woman I'd fallen in love with 15 years ago. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by something cold and bitter. You want to destroy my family over your wounded pride? I want to be treated with basic respect, I replied. Apparently that's too much to ask. We gave you everything, she screamed, her composure finally cracking. A beautiful home, social connections, a lifestyle most people can only dream of, and this is how you repay us? You gave me a cage, I said quietly. A very pretty cage, but still a cage. The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. Nina's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of rage, not sadness. Fine, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. If that's how you want to play this game, then let's play. She turned to her family, her back straight and her chin raised in defiance. Do it, she said. Destroy him. I don't care anymore. Richard started to protest, but Nina cut him off. He wants a war. Give him one. Use every connection, call in every favor, burn every bridge. I want him ruined. The room erupted in chaos as everyone started talking at once, but I wasn't listening anymore. I was looking at my wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, and realizing that I'd never really known her at all. I picked up the USB drive and slipped it back into my portfolio. Well, I said, raising my voice above the din, I guess we know where we stand. As I walked toward the door, Nina's voice followed me. You'll regret this, Grant. I promise you that. I paused at the threshold and looked back at the assembled group. Wealthy, powerful, and absolutely furious. Maybe, I said, but at least I'll regret it as myself, not as whoever you wanted me to be. Then I walked out, leaving them to plan my destruction. The attack began the next morning with surgical precision. By 9 a.m., I'd received calls from my bank informing me that several of my business accounts were being audited. By 10 a.m., 3 more clients had canceled major projects. By noon, the building inspector was at my office conducting a routine examination that was anything but routine. Jesse found me in the conference room, staring at the growing pile of legal documents and official notices. They're not messing around, he said, settling into the chair beside me. No, they're not. I picked up a letter from the state licensing board. Someone filed a complaint about my professional conduct, anonymous, of course. What are you going to do? I looked out the window at the Palm Beach skyline, at the buildings I'd helped design and construct over the past 12 years. Some of them bore my architectural signature, subtle design elements that marked them as Elwood architecture projects. Others were more collaborative efforts, but I'd poured my heart and soul into every one of them. I'm going to fight back, I said. With the USB drive? With something better. Jesse raised an eyebrow. What's better than blackmail material? The truth. That afternoon, I made a series of phone calls. The first was to Maria Santos, an investigative journalist with the Palm Beach Tribune who'd been trying to get an interview with me for months about the city's luxury development boom. The second was to David Chen, a financial crimes attorney who specialized in white-collar investigations. The third was to my old college roommate, Mike Thompson, who now worked as a forensic accountant for the FBI. By 5 p.m., I had meetings scheduled with all three. The next few days blurred together in a haze of interviews, document reviews, and legal consultations. Maria Santos was particularly interested in the pattern of failed businesses that somehow never affected the Harrow family's credit rating or social standing. David Chen found several potential violations of bankruptcy law and tax regulations. Mike Thompson took one look at the financial records and whistled low. "Grant, this is bigger than just your family problems," he said during our meeting at a coffee shop far from Palm Beach's social scene. "If even half of this is accurate, we're talking about systematic fraud, tax evasion, and possibly money laundering." "I just want them to leave me alone," I said. "I understand that, but once this information is out there, it's going to take on a life of its own. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Nina's threat, about the systematic destruction of my business and reputation that was already underway. "They declared war first," I said. "I'm just choosing the battlefield." The Tribune article ran on a Thursday morning, front page above the fold. Palm Beach family's business empire built on questionable foundations. Maria Santos had done her homework, cross-referencing my documents with public records and finding even more irregularities than I'd originally discovered. My phone started ringing at 6 a.m. and didn't stop. The first call was from Jesse, laughing so hard he could barely speak. "Have you seen the Tribune website? The comment section is incredible. People have been waiting years for someone to take on the Harrows." The second call was from Nina, screaming obscenities that would have made a sailor blush before hanging up on me. The third call was from Richard Harrow's attorney, threatening to sue me for defamation, invasion of privacy, and anything else he could think of. I let them all go to voicemail. By afternoon, the story had been picked up by 3 other newspapers and 2 television stations. The Palm Beach Police Department announced they were opening an investigation into possible financial crimes. The IRS issued a statement saying they were reviewing certain tax filings related to the Harrow family trust. The war was over before it had really begun. 3 months later, I was sitting in my office, which was busier than ever, thanks to clients who appreciated an architect with integrity, when Jesse burst through the door with a newspaper in his hands. "You have to see this," he said, spreading the Tribune across my desk. The headline read, "Harrow family reaches settlement with federal prosecutors." Below it was a photograph of Bradley Harrow leaving the courthouse, his face hidden behind expensive sunglasses and his lawyer's briefcase. I scanned the article quickly. The family had agreed to pay $2.3 million in back taxes and penalties, plus another $1.8 million in restitution to creditors who'd been shortchanged in their various business failures. Bradley would serve 6 months of house arrest and 200 hours of community service. The family trust was being dissolved, and all assets would be subject to ongoing federal oversight. "No jail time," I noted. "Rich people rarely go to jail," Jesse replied. "But they're finished in Palm Beach society. The country club revoked their membership, the charity boards kicked them off, and half their friends won't return their calls." I folded the newspaper and set it aside. "What about Nina?" "Divorce was finalized last week. She's moving back to her parents' place in Connecticut. Apparently she's telling people she was an innocent victim of your vindictive manipulation." That sounded like Nina, never accepting responsibility for anything, always finding someone else to blame. "Any regrets?" Jesse asked. I considered the question seriously. My marriage was over. My social connections in Palm Beach had been completely reshuffled, and I'd made some very powerful enemies. But I was also free, truly free, for the first time in years. "No," I said finally. "No regrets." My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me check. It was from Derek Harrow. "Thank you. You did what the rest of us never had the courage to do." I showed the message to Jesse, who grinned. "See? Even the family thinks you did the right thing. One member of the family, I corrected. The only one who matters. That evening, I drove out to the beach and walked along the shoreline, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The water was warm, the breeze was gentle, and for the first time in years, I felt completely at peace. My phone rang. It was Maria Santos. "Grant, I wanted to let you know. The Tribune is nominating our Harrow investigation for a Pulitzer. None of it would have been possible without your courage." "Just doing what needed to be done," I said. "Still, thank you. The world needs more people willing to stand up to bullies, regardless of how much money they have." After she hung up, I continued walking along the beach, thinking about everything that had happened. The Harrows had tried to destroy me for refusing to apologize, for refusing to bow down to their sense of entitlement. Instead, they destroyed themselves. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be a victim. As I headed back to my car, I noticed a couple arguing near the pier. The woman was berating the man for some perceived embarrassment, her voice carrying clearly across the water. "You made me look like an idiot in front of the Hendersons. How could you be so thoughtless?" The man stood there taking it, his shoulders slumped in defeat, apologizing over and over for whatever minor social transgression he'd committed. I almost walked over to tell him that it gets better, that standing up for yourself is worth whatever consequences follow, but I didn't. Some lessons can only be learned the hard way. Instead, I got in my car and drove home to my empty house, which no longer felt empty at all. It felt like freedom. 6 months later, Elwood Architecture won the contract to design Palm Beach's new community center, a project that would serve the working families and middle-class residents who actually made the city function. It wasn't the most glamorous job we'd ever taken, but it was the most meaningful. Jessie and I were reviewing the final plans when my assistant knocked on the door. "There's someone here to see you," she said. "Says it's personal." Nina walked into my office looking older, more tired, but somehow more real than she had in years. She was dressed simply, jeans and a sweater instead of designer clothes, and her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. "Hello, Grant." "Nina." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "This is unexpected." She sat down carefully, as if she wasn't sure she was welcome. "I wanted to apologize," she said quietly. "For everything. The way I treated you, the way my family treated you, the things I said that night at the restaurant." I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or hidden agenda, but all I saw was genuine regret. "Apology accepted," I said. "Just like that?" "Just like that. We both made mistakes, Nina. The difference is, you're trying to make amends." She smiled, a real smile, not the practiced social expression I'd grown accustomed to. "I've been in therapy," she said. "Trying to figure out who I am when I'm not performing for other people. It's harder than I thought it would be. But worth it? Yeah, worth it." We talked for another hour about safe topics. Her job at a nonprofit in Connecticut, my work on the community center, the weather. It felt strange but also comfortable, like running into an old friend you'd lost touch with years ago. As she was leaving, Nina paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of what you did. It took courage to stand up to us, and we needed to be stood up to." "Thank you," I said. "That means more than you know." After she left, Jesse poked his head into my office. "How was that?" "Better than expected," I said. "Closure, I guess." "Good. You deserve some peace?" He was right. After everything that had happened, after all the anger and betrayal and public drama, peace was exactly what I deserved. And finally, I had it.